Episode 23, A Friend Indeed, first aired May 5th, 1974. It was written by Peter S. Fischer, previously responsible for writing the episode Publish or Perish. And of the 9 episodes he wrote, he said this one we're about to deep dive was his favorite. The director today is a friend of Peter Falk's, Ben Gazzarra, born August 28, 1930 in Manhattan, New York City. He's more commonly known as an actor appearing in The Strange One, Anatomy of Murder, Roadhouse, and The Big Lebowski. He was also good friends with John Cassavetes. You remember him as the murderer in the Columbo episode Etude in Black. Gazzarra was in 3 Cassavetes films, Husbands, The Killing of a Chinese Bookie, and Opening Night. He was also in every episode of Arrest and Trial and Run for Your Life. Ben Gazzarra will be directing one more future episode of Columbo. Our story today begins in the night, looking across the street at a house with a light on. Inside the house is a man dialing a number. You might find me annoying for starting this so early in the video, but I have a quick question about an observation. Why does his phone have one clear and one white switch hook? Is it simply because he had to replace one? It doesn't seem like those would need replacing very often. Maybe it's because... Oh, you don't care? Oh, okay. That's fine. I understand. Well, moving on. The person this man is calling answers.
Yes.
Margaret?
Is that you, Hugh?
Is Mark there? It's important.
She reminds him that it's Tuesday, which means Mark is at the club, of course. She explains her ingenious technique for how she remembers when it's Tuesday.
It's Tuesday. I can always tell it comes right after Monday.
Oh, right.
He says he'll go meet him at the club and they hang up. Then he walks out of the shadows, looking sick to his stomach, and across the room is a woman, flat out on the floor. The man walks past a clock reading 9:04, maybe that's important, and he kneels down beside the woman to close her eyes. So, I guess she's dead. The man grabs his coat and leaves the house. Now we are on the outside of what was and is still today the Riviera Country Club, located in the Pacific Palisades of Los Angeles, California. This is the best image of what this view from the episode looks like today. It's basically the same with a little remodeling. The Riviera first opened in 1926. It is, of course, a private club and has an ultra-rich championship golf course and some tennis courts. There is quite a list of stars and famous people that had a membership here, one being Peter Falk. Now, inside the club, we immediately see Cosmo Sardo, previously from Lady in Waiting, The Greenhouse Jungle, Requiem for a Falling Star, and Double Exposure.
Mr. Caldwell, good to see you, sir.
Oh, yes, Charles, thank you. I'm looking for Mr. Halperin.
Charles is played by Judson Morgan. It's been a while, but we remember him as the judge in Ransom for a Dead Man. And this man on the right is Buzz Barbie, previously seen at the inquest of Lady in Waiting. Well, Hugh, we learn, walks through the club and finds Mark.
Hi, Hugh. Hi, Mark.
Hugh is played by Michael McGuire, born June 30th, 1930. He was in some episodes of Dark Shadows and Cheers and every episode of Empire. He was also in the films Hard Times and A More Perfect Union, America Becomes a Nation.
You owe me money.
You know, you cost me a great deal.
You'll live with it.
Byron, I think your dice are about to turn cold.
The Army may have taught you bravery, Mark, but I'm not so sure about your judgment.
Byron is played by Byron Morrow, born September 8th, 1911, in Chicago, Illinois. Glancing through his resume, it seems like he was in at least one episode of every TV show in America between 1960 and 1989. He showed up most often in The Days of Our Lives and Executive Suite. His character's name here is Amos Lawrence, according to the credits, but that doesn't matter because Mark calls him Byron. But Charles, the waiter, knows his character's name is supposed to be Amos Lawrence.
Mr. Lawrence is having quite a run with the dice.
Still need doubles to win.
I like the two behind Byron that have a little commentary with each other when he rolls a 4. 4 is a pretty good number. Yeah. Mark kisses the hand of the tart hanging on him and rolls. Well, he gets doubles. Mark Halperin is played by Richard Kiley, born March 31st, 1922 in Chicago, Illinois. He was in Pickup on South Street, The Phoenix City Story, The Gospel According to Matthew, and every episode of A Year in the Life. And he was the voice of the tour guide in Jurassic Park.
The voice you're now hearing is Richard Kiley. We spared no expense.
You will see a herd of the first dinosaurs on our tour, called Dilophosaurus.
He also won an Emmy for voicing the National Geographic documentary Tigers of the Snow.
The people living in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned.
And yes, I welcome your sharing of credits I didn't mention on Richard Kiley and everyone else who we haven't met in a previous episode.
You see, Byron, sometimes a little boldness is exactly what's called for.
The happy man behind Byron is Michael Grayson, and we remember him from Dagger of the Mind, The Most Dangerous Match, and Any Old Port in a Storm.
Mark, excuse me. Could I talk to you for a second?
What's the matter?
I'd like to see you for a second.
All right, be back in a minute.
They walk through the backgammon room with Mark asking, "What's wrong?" and Hugh saying, "Oh, nothing, I just need to talk to you."
Something wrong? No.
Well, there's Diane Travis, looking bored, waiting for her turn to play. Before today, we met her in Etude in Black, Requiem for a Falling Star, Lovely but Lethal, Candidate for Crime, Double Exposure, and Mind Over Mayhem. And back there on the right is Joe Pine from Blueprint for Murder, Dagger of the Mind, Publisher Parish, and Swan Song. They sit down in a less crowded area.
Are you sure she's dead?
Hugh says yes and explains they were fighting and screaming at each other because he was sure she was going to be seeing another man tonight.
She came at me, and I must have grabbed her by the throat.
All right, take it easy.
I didn't know what I was doing. When I realized what I was doing, I let her go, and she just fell.
Calm down, calm down.
Hugh pleads with Mark to tell him what to do. Mark asks if Hugh called anyone, and he said, "Just your place, but I didn't say anything about it." Hugh wonders if he should just go to the police.
You can't afford to do that. Everyone knows the problems you and Janice were having.
Mark comes up with a little scheme to create an alibi for Hugh. He instructs him to go into the more crowded side of the bar and at 10:30 call his house.
I'll answer the phone. You pretend it's Janice. Make sure the bartender and anyone else in the bar overhears your conversation.
Hugh agrees, and the scene changes. Rolling up to his own house is Mark in a 1973 Cadillac Fleetwood Eldorado. He puts on some gloves as he crosses the street to Hugh's house. This intersection is 4th Street and Muirfield Road in Los Angeles. The blurred house is Mark Halpern's house. If we zoom in, that same streetlight has remained, which is really cool. And then on our left is the brick wall, now covered in ivy. Mark goes up to the gate to jimmy the lock with a screwdriver, and this gate appears to still be the original gate from the episode. It's so fun to see that. Well, Mark breaks the lock to their sliding door with that screwdriver. He's really good at that. We see dead Janice on the floor looking like perfect Sleeping Beauty, even though she was violently strangled to death. Mark kneels down next to her and undresses her. He takes her clothes up the grand staircase. So much beautiful, heavy-looking wood. Mark tries to imagine how a woman would put her dress on a chair. Yeah, something like that. He puts her undergarments in the hamper and pulls back the blankets. The scene cuts to nervous, sick Hugh drinking at the bar. This bartender is Ben Fromer. We met him already once before in The Most Crucial Game as a photographer. Anyway, back to Mark setting up the perfect scene, trying to think as a woman, and what they do in the evening. He goes to the closet to pick out a fluffy, flowy, powder blue nightgown, and then breaks open Janice's jewelry box, taking her heavy jewelry. Checking on Hugh, he's got the phone in his hand. And I cannot ignore mentioning this man any longer. I haven't talked about him because I can't identify him, but he has already shown up 3 other times in Lady in Waiting, Dagger of the Mind, and Candidate for Crime. If anybody can help me, it would be much appreciated. Back to Mark, still lifting jewelry, and the phone rings.
Janice, is that you?
Why would he call his own house at 10:30 at night, asking his wife if she's the one answering? I guess he's nervous.
You in the bar?
Yes, that's right.
Mark says Janice is going to bed early and she's not going to wait up for you.
Yes, darling, of course you must be exhausted.
Mark responds with saying, "Get a good night's sleep and I'll see you in the morning."
Say it.
All right, you get a good night's sleep, and I'll see you in the morning, huh?
Mark encourages him by saying he's doing fine and instructs him to stay there in the bar until the police contact him.
Yes, good night, darling. Oh, she's been out all day shopping. She's exhausted.
Yes, sir.
She's getting ready for bed now. Now I guess I want her to have another one.
So that means she's preparing for sleep now because she's so exhausted from shopping all day.
Yes, sir.
Back to Mark finishing up the crime scene. He grabs the blue nightgown, and we can assume he has dressed Janice because now he's hustling back to his own house. And entering his garage, he puts the handkerchief full of jewelry into what I figure is a bowling ball bag. He enters into his house and heads upstairs. I like the crystal ball newel post cap. I'm not sure I've ever seen that before.
Hi.
Oh, you're home early tonight, Mark.
Yeah. I was a little tired.
Then we are given a little insight to their relationship, how they kind of poke at each other.
What's this? Another one of your bleeding heart friends get into print?
Did you win tonight, Mark, or is that a silly question?
Mark says yes, actually, he did win.
That means I won't have to write you a check this week. That'll be refreshing.
She shares that she'll be speaking at the Holcomb House tomorrow evening because she's been named Woman of the Year.
Really? How much is that going to cost you?
Oh, don't be crude.
He says, my, that's quite an honor.
Queen bee to a motley assortment of junkies, pushers, and losers. You know, I don't know how much money you've pumped into your assorted charities, Margaret, but it's a lot more than any $10 trophy they're going to hand you.
She asks him not to talk like that. He continues with a little sarcasm, saying if she's so embarrassed of her millions of dollars, he'd be happy to take it off her hands.
Money is a weapon, Mark. A tool to be used for good, if it's used properly.
Margaret is played by Rosemary Murphy, born January 13th, 1925, in Munich, Bavaria, Germany. She was in To Kill a Mockingbird, You'll Like My Mother, and Eleanor and Franklin in the White House years.
You met and married my son in less than a month's time, and you spent that last leave with him, the last 2 weeks of his life that he might have spent with me. You robbed me of what was the rest of his life, and I'll never forgive you for that.
That means handing it out like Halloween candy to a bunch of grifters who've never done a day's work in their life.
Because nobody has ever given them a chance.
Oh.
You know what it's like to be an ex-convict trying to find honest work?
Mark gets up, totally uninterested in talking about ex-cons because he knows everything there is to know about them. He walks over to their French doors and casually steps out onto the balcony. Looking across the street at a still shot of Hugh's house, he tells Margaret,
I just saw a man running from the Caldwell house.
What?
Yeah, all the lights are on over there. I don't like the looks of that.
I don't see anyone.
He heads over to his bedside phone and calls the police, but not in a way a normal person would. We learn something very interesting about him here.
Sergeant, this is Deputy Commissioner Halperin. I just saw a strange man, running from a house on Fairfax Drive. I want you to dispatch a unit over there immediately, will you?
Yes, of course I looked up that address. There is no Fairfax Drive in LA, but there is a 1278 Fairfax Avenue, and it seems to be an alleyway of graffiti. Halperin was sure taking a mighty risk doing this for Hugh. When he crosses the street to the Caldwell house, he could have been easily seen. No matter your economic status, if you have neighbors, they will always be nosy. And him hustling across the intersection through all the streetlights would catch anyone's eye, and he, bright as day in the night, looks like Mark Halperin out there. The scene changes to a group of police cars and an ambulance as another car pulls up to the site. A policeman opens the door to the car, and we are greeted with Columbo's backside. Turns out he dropped his cigar on the drive.
I don't want to burn up the commissioner's car.
The limousine driver, enjoying himself as he watches Columbo search for his cigar under the seat, is played by Jack Krupnick. He can be found in the background of a few movies like The Poseidon Adventure, The Killing of a Chinese Bookie, and The Amityville Horror.
Come here, you little rascal. Okay. That looks okay.
The policeman that opened the door is T.J. Castronovo, born July 14th, 1932 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He was in many episodes of Taxi. Columbo heads into the house with his cigar.
Well, Columbo, it's about time you showed up. I want you to pick up every known burglar first thing in the morning. I don't care if you talked to him before, talk to him again. If you need any extra men, let me know.
The lieutenant that Mark Halperin is talking to is played by John Finnegan, who we are becoming familiar with because we've already met him in Blueprint for Murder, The Most Dangerous Match, and Lovely But Lethal. Mark refers to him as Lieutenant Duffy, but he is credited as Lieutenant Dryer. Columbo apologizes about being late. The battery in his car went dead.
Tried to get my wife's car. She was at the sister-in-law, so I called there. It's a boring story. Thank you very much for sending your car. I appreciate it.
Quite all right. Duffy here will fill you in on what's happened. It's the same man that's been hitting this area in the past few weeks.
Columbo says he's going to have a look around. Then this guy has the strangest comment he felt he needed to share with Columbo.
Good looking broad, except for the marks around her neck.
Yeah, if we could just cover up those marks from her being strangled to death, she would be perfect. What a weird thing to say about a dead woman. His name is Doyle, apparently, and he's played by Victor Campos, born 1935 in New York City. He was in almost every episode of Cades County, and some episodes of Kojak and Doctor's Hospital. He also shows up in Scarface and Juice. Columbo notices the huge ring on her finger. Entering the bedroom, there is a photographer played by Elden Burke, born September 23rd, 1935 in Cuyahoga County, Ohio. He did more directing than acting, well, assistant directing. He worked on most of the Heart to Heart episodes and several episodes of Hotel and In the Heat of the Night. Columbo asks the fingerprint man if he found anything, and he says everything looks pretty clean. Columbo notices something under Janice's pillow. It's a pink nightgown. He then goes to the closet, having a little look at some of the clothes and thinking to himself. We don't know exactly what's going through his mind, which is actually kind of nice. We just get to see him work. He asks if the handles to the closet have been dusted.
Not yet, Lieutenant.
Well, let me know if you find anything.
I think you're wasting your time, Lieutenant.
Well, let's not be a negative Nelly here. He says he's been the one dusting all the houses that have been hit by the same guy, and he never leaves a print.
Well, let me know if you find anything.
Fingerprint Man is played by Ben Marino.
Marino Brothers.
Born October 1st, 1925 in Avon, New York. He was in Capone, The Killing of a Chinese Bookie, and several episodes of Dynasty. Scene changed to the outside of a building. This building still stands on Los Angeles Street, but has had quite a bit of changes happen to it and the area around it. Well, inside the building is Commissioner Mark Halperin giving a press conference. The photographer over here taking accidental pictures is Mickey Golden. He's the one in competition with Mike Lally for the most sightings. We've seen him in Suitable for Framing twice, Lady in Waiting, The Most Crucial Game, Requiem for a Falling Star, The Most Dangerous Match, Double Shock, Candidate for Crime, Double Exposure, and Mind Over Mayhem. And there's that unnamed bartender from earlier in the episode. And we haven't seen him for a while, but there's Murray Pollock from Ransom for a Dead Man, Suitable for Framing, Blueprint for Murder, Dagger of the Mind, and A Stitch in Crime.
The brutal murder last night of Janice Caldwell is a scathing indictment of the police department's failure to cope with
Crime on the most fundamental levels. But the taxpayers of this great city are entitled to the safety of their homes.
Speaking of Mike Lally, here he is tending bar for the third time. The majority rules on the question of if I should be listing every single episode every single time. So, here we go. We first saw Mike Lally in Lady in Waiting, and then in Short Fuse, Blueprint for Murder, Etude in Black, Requiem for a Falling Star, A Stitch in Crime, Double Shock, Any Old Port in a Storm, Candidate for Crime, Double Exposure, Publisher Perish, Mind Over Mayhem, and Swan Song. We see there is a couple watching the broadcast, and the man hates it.
That guy gives me a pain.
All right, I'll turn it off.
So we were going shopping.
I told you I have to wait for somebody here.
And you know I hate this place.
But I like it.
The little jig playing on the radio is the same one playing at the beach party from Any Old Port in a Storm. She asks if he's bought the tickets for the roller derby tonight.
You're crazy. I'm not going to any roller derby.
In case you aren't sure what a roller derby is, it's 5 versus 5 roller skaters skating around an oval track. One skater per team is labeled as the jammer, and they try to make as many laps around the track as possible while the 4 other opposing team members try to block and stop them. So it's a very physical, pushing and shoving skating sport. I know that was a pretty poor explanation, but that's what Google's for on your side if you want more. They go round and around and around the roller derby, where you find everyone having barrels of fun, yes you will. Round and around and around the roller derby. Well, the lady continues to complain, and the man has had enough of it.
You think you're gonna hang around this place again with your old pals from prison? Guess again, Artie.
Hey, this is my place of business. You don't have to come in here, so don't come in here.
We've met the actor playing Artie. It's Val Avery, previously seen in Dead Weight and The Most Crucial Game. The unhappy woman is named Thelma in the credits, played by Eleanor Z., born February 18, 1931. She was in Husbands, What's Up Doc, and Opening Night. The embodiment of the 70s enters the bar, and he turns out to be the man Artie was waiting for. Artie says he's got the stuff at his joint from the other night. But this man says there's no way he's touching anything Artie has, not after he killed that woman last night.
That wasn't me. Come on. Seems been hitting that neighborhood pretty good.
And Artie agrees that he has, but he never went to the house where the woman was killed. That wasn't him. But that doesn't change anything with the 70s man, because everyone knows Artie is the one who's been working that neighborhood.
I should have known better than deal with a punk like you! Johnny Romano, Harold Speller, they were men!
Yeah, but they're dead.
According to the credits, this man is named Sharky, played by James Christie. He didn't do a whole lot of acting, but he does show up in Capone, Raging Bull, and a few episodes of Matlock.
It's tougher on the outside now. You know, you spent so much time up in that prison, you don't know how it is anymore.
And Sharky leaves, cool as a cucumber. Thelma asks if he's done so they can go get their tickets for the roller derby.
Come on, let's go. Come on, come on, come on, come on. Let's go. Come on, you can walk faster. Come on.
Will you shut up?
Back to the press meeting where Halpern explains that there will be a double shift on all squad cars in the Bel Air area, from sunset to sunrise, as well as helicopter patrol.
As a matter of fact, I plan to be in that chopper myself tonight to get a first-hand look at this operation.
He encourages everyone that they are going to get this man no matter what.
Now, last night he made his first mistake. My wife and I were in our bedroom when he ran from the Caldwell house. Well, he's going to make other mistakes. When he does, we'll get him.
Scene changes to Columbo flying through a stop sign and driving up to the Halpern household. Looks like he's got his car running again. Maybe he used the Mrs. car to jump his battery. He walked on in without any hesitation and out into the backyard.
Ma'am?
You startled me.
What happened?
On the cactus,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I know you don't, huh?
Yes, ma'am, you do. I was afraid you'd remember it was at the chief inspector's dinner last year at the hotel. I was a little drunk.
I have a difficult time imagining Columbo drunk, but there's public record of Peter Falk being drunk with his two buddies, John Cassavetes and today's director, Ben Gazzarra, on the Dick Cavett Show, where they are supposed to be promoting their latest film, Husbands, and they're all loaded.
Wait. No, don't get up. Don't get up. Don't get up. Don't get up.
Don't get up?
No.
Oh, my God!
Oh, really?
Well, that did about sum up the film Husbands for me. Bunch of big kids. That whole, quote, interview can be found on YouTube if you want to see how it all went. Anyway, where were we?
Several people have told me that she and her husband were, they were having problems.
I don't know about the statue. Looks like something Helen Stewart might have created. Columbo wants to know if she could give a few names of the other men Janice was seeing.
I'm sorry. I never pried into Janice's personal affairs. I did try talking to her. She became very defensive, almost violent.
Then she was seeing other men.
Yes.
Did any of you have a pair of glasses like these? They're a very bold frame. Before Columbo leaves, he wanted to know her description of the burglar she and her husband saw running from the Caldwell house last night.
Oh, I didn't see him.
By the time I got to the terrace, he'd gone.
Oh. Thank you, ma'am.
Well, Columbo leaves. His car starts right up, sounding kind of rough. He drives in reverse all the way to the Caldwell house. You're allowed to do that if you're a policeman, of course. Our view switches to a sad, sickly, pathetic-looking Hugh. The sunlight highlighting his eyebrow for us.
Excuse me, sir. A police officer to see you.
Oh, there's Alma Beltran. Remember, we barely got a glimpse of her during Double Exposure. Columbo introduces himself and gets right down to business.
I spoke to your maid, Mrs. Fernandez. She's a nice lady. I guess she worked very long hours yesterday.
Hugh says she worked till 8 o'clock, which is when they arrived home.
Mrs. Fernandez says she was wearing a red dress.
Yes, I believe it was.
And then you went out 9 o'clock.
Yes.
Was your wife still wearing the red dress?
Yes, Lieutenant.
He says Janice didn't get ready for bed till around 10:30 when he called from the club. Then he shares his guilty man knows everything performance.
Look, Janice apparently went upstairs to change. She put on her nightgown, heard a noise, came down and surprised this burglar. I should think the facts would speak for themselves.
Columbo says there's one thing that's very strange about all this. Mrs. Fernandez deep cleaned, dusted, waxed, polished the whole house, every room, including that bedroom.
Now, the fingerprint people, they checked the handle on the closet door. Your wife's prints weren't on it. How did she open the door and take out the nightgown without leaving any prints?
Hugh knows the answer to this without a moment of hesitation.
You see, my wife was in the habit of folding her nightgown every morning when she got up and putting it under her pillow.
Hugh's response really threw a curveball at Columbo. I believe up to this point, Columbo was sure Hugh killed his wife, even though he did kill his wife. But now, this pajama thing is messing with his conclusions.
I say yes. That would explain it. Yes, it certainly would.
Columbo leaves with his mind full of questions as he walks to his car. But wouldn't you know it, the car doesn't want to start. Sounds like he needs a new alternator. He gets out, looks under the hood, and then gets back in the car and tries again. I guess, sometimes just opening the hood and slamming it shut could vibrate something into place well enough to start the car, but not today. So he runs off, leaving the door to his car wide open, yelling to the cars driving by.
Excuse me, sir!
The first guy just keeps driving. Then he yells to a lady in a 1974 Chevy Caprice estate wagon, who slows down, probably to have a look at him, and is like, "No way am I letting this scruffy-looking fella into my car." There's a 1974 Chevy Corvette Stingray back there. And the neighbor is working on opening his own water park, it looks like. Then another car comes along and Columbo gets him to stop.
Yeah, you got some jumpers for a battery? Listen, there's a gas station up there. Will you drive me over there?
The Good Samaritan lets Columbo get into his 1973 Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme. The scene switches to Columbo entering Commissioner Halperin's office, who is acting very busy.
Columbo?
Excuse me, sir. I didn't mean to barge in. I looked for your secretary. I guess she's powdering her nose or something.
Halperin asks Columbo to hurry up with whatever he needs to say because he needs to leave very soon.
I'm making real progress, sir, so I thought that...
Finish your report?
No, I haven't.
Well, finish the report and I'll read it.
Columbo wanted to double-check the description of the burglar.
It was hardly a description. I barely got a glimpse of him.
You did say dark sweater, dark pants...
And a dark cap.
Just dark.
It was night.
That's too bad. That's what your wife said.
Well, suddenly Halperin isn't in as big of a hurry. Did you notice the Archer statue back there? We first saw it in Death Lends a Hand, and then again in Candidate for Crime.
Spoke to my wife, did you?
I thought you left. On the basis of the news conference this morning, I thought that she also saw the burglar.
He was gone by the time she got to the terrace.
Yes, sir. Yes, that's what she said.
That's what she said. Now that Halperin knows what his wife said, he decides to go ahead and leave Columbo. Halperin arrives at his home and enters the master bathroom where his wife is bathing.
Please leave the room, darling. You know I like to bathe in private.
Halperin laughs and tells her not to be so coy. Margaret seems frustrated that he's not leaving and says, "Come on, Mark, I'll only be a minute."
Have I told you recently, darling, that our marriage has been a constant joy to me?
No, it hasn't.
Well, it has.
He does a little bit of light-hearted talking about her on the same topic of money as when we first heard them interacting with each other.
$4.5 million, given to hand it out to anybody who has a sad story and a rumpled suit.
My inheritance.
That's wrong, darling. My inheritance.
And she inhales all the bathwater she can in 5 seconds and dies. You know, with a bathtub that big, it seems she could have swam away once pushed under. Then the scene switches to what I learned is stock footage of the villa of Fusi de Rothschild built in 1912 by Baroness Beatrice de Rothschild and located on the French Riviera. We soon learn this building is supposed to be where Janice Caldwell's funeral is taking place. A bit extravagant. The music playing on the organ is Jesu, Joy of Man's Desiring, composed by Johann Sebastian Bach in the early 1700s. It is the 10th movement of his famous cantata. Get ready to help me with this, my German friends. Herz und Mund und Tat und Leben. I used to really like this composition, but that changed in the middle of a piano recital I did in college. I practiced and practiced this piece for days and hours of days and hours, and I had no problems with it until I was up on stage performing and suddenly I forgot how to play piano. Have you ever had an experience like that? Well, you know how scarring it can be, so I don't like this piece anymore. Anyway, Mark Halperin arrives at the funeral loaded with flowers from previous victims' funerals and kneels at the casket. Hugh pitifully walks over to kneel next to Mark and thanks him for coming.
Where's Margaret?
She's at home.
Mark, I don't know how to thank you. If it hadn't been for you last night,
you'd be facing a murder charge.
Last night? Man, funeral arrangements move fast in L.A.
If there's anything I can ever do for you.
There is, my friend.
Uh-oh.
If you gentlemen want to finish paying your respects to the loved one, we will be closing up until 8:30.
Do you recognize this man? Well, his character's name is Nathan Flowers. How lovely for a funeral director. But we remember him enjoying a hot dog with Columbo at Tale of the Pup in Murder by the Book. His name is Bernie Cuppy. Then Mark explains where Margaret is at home.
She's lying on the tiled floor near the front door. She's dead.
Good Lord, Mark.
Quiet.
How?
She drowned in the bathtub.
He says, but the police aren't going to know that. They're going to think it was the notorious Bel Air burglar that killed her.
Yeah, but I can't get involved.
You are involved, my friend. This is the quid quo pro.
Or more correctly, quid pro quo, which is Latin meaning something for something or this for that. And this storyline is when this episode is commonly compared to the 1951 Hitchcock film Strangers on a Train.
Each one has somebody that he'd like to get rid of. So they swap murders. Each fellow does the other fellow's murder. Then there's nothing to connect them. You do my murder, I do yours.
You know who that man was wanting to swap murders? Why, that was Robert Walker. Why does his face and his name seem so familiar? Because he is the father of Robert Walker Jr., the high-strung, odd little genius from Mind Over Mayhem. Just a fun connection.
You killed your wife and I protected you. You protect me or I'll see to it you go to jail for the rest of your life. Is that clear?
Yes, perfectly.
The scene switches to the blackest night with a loud helicopter shining a big spotlight down on the Bel Air neighborhood. The perfect environment for a burglar to decide to head out for an evening heist. This helicopter changes between two different models. It starts here as a Bell 206 and then surprises us as a Hughes 369 or 500, similar to the one in Ransom for a Dead Man. So they are patrolling around the neighborhood, shining this big light into people's homes, and suddenly Halpern sees something funny going on at his house.
I saw someone lurking near my wife's car. He just disappeared. Circle around here, Pete, will you? Yes, sir.
Pete, the police pilot played by Paul Sorensen, was born February 16th, 1926 in Kenosha, Wisconsin. His resume is very long, mostly in the background, sometimes credited, sometimes not. Search for him in Hang 'em High, Escape to Witch Mountain, and Smokey and the Bandit. They shine the spotlight down on the back door of Mark Halpern's house, and here comes Hugh, dressed in a dark sweater and dark pants.
And a dark cap.
Slim Hugh manages to run across the lawn carrying Margaret's limp body, and before he tosses her into the pool, we get a moment to see him with a stocking over his head, not a dark cap tonight. And he's looking a little more like Steven Seagal here. Must be the lighting. He drops her into the pool and takes time to look up at the helicopter for some reason, and then runs off like a big bulky man. It's strange how fear can change us physically. Anyway, Halpern instructs Pilot Pete to get as low to the pool as possible. This is quite a stunt, and there is no information about the stuntman or the stunt in general. This man swimming underwater is clearly not Richard Kiley, but they did manage a mustache on him, and the guy swimming her body to the edge of the pool does not have a mustache, so maybe it fell off in the water.
What are you waiting for? Get on an ambulance, for God's sake. Margaret, she's gone, sir. What do you mean? She's going to be all right. Get an ambulance!
Yeah, how do you know so quickly? I didn't see you checking her vitals. Well, he pretends to do some kind of strange mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, as the policemen don't get an ambulance. This man that immediately pronounced her dead is played by Richard Lancey, and this is his one and only acting credit, and his name is listed in the credits, Lucky Duck, although they spelled his name wrong, so that's too bad, I guess. Well, I learned a fun little backstory for the scene told by Richard Kiley himself. My favorite story that came out of that show is when there was a scene in which I pretend to rescue my wife, played by Rosemary Murphy, from a swimming pool. I had to run, dive in the pool, drag her out, and do mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Well, I threw myself into the scene, and I'm doing the mouth-to-mouth when I suddenly realize I have never met Rosemary before. So, while the cameras are still rolling, I looked down and said, "How do you do, Rosemary? We've never met before. I'm Richard Kiley." Moving on, Columbo enters the Halpern residence and finds Lieutenant Duffy Dryer.
It's funny, though. It's very funny. What? Well, there's no sign that he forced his way into the house. As near as we can figure it, he was laying for her out and back by the car.
Columbo heads outside to ask what happened.
See for yourself, Columbo. She drowned.
Guy tossed her in the pool. Wonder why she didn't swim.
Probably couldn't swim.
This Doyle fella loves speaking ill of the dead.
He didn't hit her first, no marks, no struggle.
Oh, there might have been a struggle. She got a tear on her sleeve.
Columbo says no, that happened this afternoon. She tore it on the cactus bush. Then in the background, a fella shows up and is questioned.
Well, she's supposed to come to our meeting tonight. Get an award, that's all. The way things look around here, I'd like to get out of here, that's all. Bet you would.
What did you say, a meeting?
Man, this Doyle is a real jerk. Pardon my French. The man continues to explain that she was supposed to be at the Holcomb house for dinner at 8 o'clock. She was going to make a speech and pick up her trophy, but when she didn't show up, he called her house. And the line was busy, so he decided to come over.
Where were you at 7:30? I was at the place setting up. Relax, huh? You're making me nervous. You can prove it, right? Yeah, I can prove it. I bet you can.
This man that would like to get out of here, that's all, is played by Albert Popwell, born July 15th, 1926 in New York City. He was in Coogan's Bluff, the first 4 Dirty Harry movies, Cleopatra Jones and its sequel, The Casino of Gold, and the Buddy Holly story.
Is this car registered to you? Oh, yes, sir. This is my car. You must be new. You know who I am?
I'll still have to see your license and registration, sir.
Columbo stops Doyle from being a butthead for the rest of the evening. Pardon my French.
All right, Doyle, take this gentleman's name and let him go.
The coroner suggests Mark take those pills he gave him.
Take the pills that I gave you.
I'll
Try
take the pills.
He's got the doctor bag from A Stitch in Crime and The Most Dangerous Match. In the credits, his name is Dr. McMurray, played by Joshua Bryant, born July 2nd, 1940 in Norfolk, Virginia. He was in The Morning After, Salem's Lot, and a few episodes of The Rockford Files, MASH, and Barnaby Jones. Columbo is like, the man was clearly insane to come back here and do this, particularly after the news broadcast when you told them about the increased patrols.
You see, it was the news broadcast that killed her.
Stupid slip of the tongue I made when I said that Margaret and I were in our bedroom and the man ran from the Caldwell house. He must have thought she could identify him.
Columbo's got that look. He's getting suspicious. Halperin is getting a little too sure of the details. He continues his little storyline by saying the burglar didn't come back to steal anything but to silence Margaret.
Yes, sir, that is a possibility.
Columbo goes to get a bottle of whiskey for Halperin. I'm still trying to identify the label.
I thought I saw something. It was kind of a gut feeling, I suppose. There he was. Same man holding Margaret in his arms.
You must have a lot of those, sir. Gut feelings.
Halperin doesn't know what he's talking about, and Columbo brings up the situation last night when he saw the man running from the Caldwell house.
The burglar had never harmed anybody before. When you called in, you asked for me. No, I was just trying to figure out how you knew that the woman was already dead.
I didn't.
So, Halperin specifically requested Columbo for this case? Does he not know Columbo's record? Does he not know that Columbo has solved some of the most complicated, intricate murders in L.A.? What a risky decision.
I've had that feeling many times. You know something is wrong. You just can't get a handle on it.
Columbo says he's going to have a look around the house in case the man got careless. Columbo enters the bathroom, up the tub stairs, and right into the tub. Look at this wallpaper and matching towels that camouflage into it. And this carpet for the bathroom. I don't think I'd want to step foot on it right out of the tub. Lieutenant Duffy Dryer comes in to crack some jokes.
What's the matter, Columbo? You think he's hiding in the tub there? Just checking. Clean and dry.
Columbo doesn't understand this burglar. He says he sneaks around in the dark, but if he hears something, he runs. Although I don't know why that's particularly strange. Duffy has an explanation.
Haven't you ever heard of future shock? The world's going to hell with itself, believe me, Columbo. Times have changed.
No, I've never heard of future shock, but now I have, and it's defined as a state of distress or disorientation due to rapid social or technological change. That is interesting. There was also a book published in 1970 called Future Shock, written by Alvin Toffler, and it is about this very subject of too much change in too short of time. Columbo talks to Duffy about Janice Caldwell and how he immediately noticed the giant diamond ring she was wearing.
What kind of burglar robs a house and leaves a ring like that on the victim's finger? So that's what's been bugging you. It's a phony. Solid glass. A piece of garbage. Glass? How do you like that?
Columbo asks a specific request of the doctor when he performs the autopsy.
When you check her lungs, see if there's any evidence of chlorine.
There won't be. Chlorine dissipates almost immediately in the human body.
Well, check it anyway, would you?
The scene changes to Halperin, very relaxed at his work desk, playing with his beard as he reads a document. His secretary buzzes to let him know Columbo is here, so he quickly puts on his sad face as Columbo enters apologetically.
This is none of my business, sir. Stop me if I'm out of line, but...
Hey, there's that big fiddly fig plant that was in A Stitching Crime and Swan Song. It's in a different pot today. I need to get one of those plants for my house. They seem to survive many different environments.
But nobody expected you to be at your desk today.
I want to be here, Lieutenant. I want to keep working, keep my mind off.
Halpern says he's been reading Lieutenant Duffy's report, and there's no question about it. It's the Bel Air burglar. Then he says, speaking of reports, and Columbo says, well, that's what he's come to talk to him about.
Sir, I'm making terrific progress, but, you see, I don't think we should be looking for a burglar. I think we should be looking for someone who made it seem like a burglary.
What are you talking about, Columbo? Here, read Duffy's report.
This is the moment when I realized this fiddly fig is a real plant and not plastic because of the damaged leaves. Columbo compliments Duffy, saying he's sure this is a very good report, but there are things that just don't add up.
Like what?
Well, for one thing, the fingerprints.
Come on, Columbo. There were no fingerprints.
That's what I mean, sir.
Columbo re-explains the timeline. Hugh Caldwell left his house around 9 o'clock and called his wife around 10:30 from the bar at the club.
If Mrs. Caldwell spoke to her husband on the phone, why didn't she leave any fingerprints on the phone? Now, the phone in the upstairs bedroom, that's absolutely clean. The one downstairs has Mr. Caldwell's prints on it, but it doesn't have Mrs. Caldwell's prints.
Halpern responds with, did it ever occur to you that the burglar used the phone after and wiped it clean?
Occurred to me that the burglar used the phone after and wiped it clean?
Yeah.
No, sir, because the burglar had to wear gloves. There were no prints of his anywhere in the house.
Columbo brings up another very strange observation, and that was her nightgown. He says she did not dress herself in that nightgown. He reminds us that she was wearing a pale blue nightgown that she got from her closet.
You know something? There were no prints on the handle of the closet door either.
Halpern says, you're not suggesting Mr. Caldwell killed his wife and then faked the whole thing? And Columbo says, oh no, not at all. He explains a little more detail about that nightgown, that Mrs. Caldwell's habit was to fold up her nightgown and tuck it under her pillow every morning. Columbo reveals to Halpern that he saw a pink nightgown under her pillow. So, of course, we know that Mrs. Caldwell will not have put on the blue nightgown.
Mr. Caldwell, he knew about the nightgown under the pillow. So if he had dressed his wife's body, that would be the first place that he would have looked. We're looking for somebody who tried to make a murder look like a burglary.
Columbo says Mrs. Halpern confirmed that Mrs. Caldwell was seeing other men, and there's a possibility that it was one of them.
All right, now listen to me, Lieutenant. You're wasting your time and my time and the department's time, and it's going to stop.
Columbo can't believe what he's hearing. He took the time to share all this pretty crucial evidence, and Halpern scolds him for it. What's that all about? I think Columbo's facial expression for the rest of the scene lets us know what he might be starting to wonder.
But we are looking for a burglar, a man who killed one woman out of fear, who killed another woman to silence her. Now, you go on that basis, and we're going to solve this case. Is that clear?
You don't think that I have anything here?
Look for your burglar. There's the killer.
Columbo's really being thrown for a loop now after this interaction. How strange that Commissioner Halpern tossed all that substantial evidence he laid out, clear as day, into the trash. Well, since that interaction did not go well, let's go somewhere else. Here is Columbo traveling down Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills, California. Matching up this scene with today, this building still remains. Who knows, maybe all the strip malls we'll be passing are the same, but just heavily remodeled. But at least this one kept its shape, so we know where in the world we are. And the black building in the background that we see in the episode is still there, it's just kinda hidden behind the green building. So here goes Columbo. None of these businesses are the same, and none of the buildings match up, so we'll just travel down the road too. All these fancy pants stores, not my cup of tea. At the corner, Columbo parks his car in front of Aquascutum, the London shop. I think that's how you say that. British Imports for Men. It's gone now, of course, and the building is now super modern and looks like every other white and gray boring building with windows. Well, Columbo doesn't want to go to the London shop. He crosses the street to Van Cleef & Arpels. It opened in 1969, a place to buy the most expensive jewelry. And surprise, that store is exactly the same today. Not visually, but it's still Van Cleef & Arpels jewelry. From the inside, it's interesting to see there is a doorman or something that allows you to enter the store through a gate. I'm surprised they didn't have him hesitate a little more for Columbo. The music playing in the background for this scene is called The End of a Love Affair by Edward Redding. Columbo asks for Mr. Wexler, but he's currently busy with a client. While he waits, he asks this lady if they sell watch bands because his broke.
It's a very good watch, only 5 years old. Waterproof and shockproof. Do you have something for that?
7 jewels.
I did a little bit of research on 7-jeweled watches. First, I'll say I am far from any kind of a watch expert and encourage all watch enthusiasts out there to pitch in on watches and jewels in the comments. But it seems 7-jeweled watches are a lower quality or less reliable compared to watches with 15 or more jewels. The jewels we're talking about are not bedazzlings on the outside, but are instead inside the watch at pivot points and impact points that reduce friction and increase efficiency as opposed to using metal bushings, which wear out sooner. Many antique pocket watches are 7-jeweled.
We have a large selection, sir, starting at $25.
No, I don't want to watch, just the band.
That is for just the band.
That's around $160 today in 2025.
I think I'll do it some other time. Thanks a lot.
This lady is played by Arlene Martell. We've already met her and talked about her during the Greenhouse Jungle. Well, the man Columbo is waiting to speak to is now available.
It's about Miss Caldwell. I believe she shopped here in your store.
Mrs. Caldwell was a valued client, yes.
Columbo takes out Mrs. Caldwell's ring.
Yes?
It's glass.
So I can see that it's glass.
Columbo then takes out a receipt for this ring, appraised at $8,000, and he wanted to know what's that all about.
I arranged with a friend to have this copied for Mrs. Caldwell so that her husband wouldn't realize that she had sold the original back to me.
As a matter of fact, she sold a lot of jewelry back to you.
He says she needed money because her husband cut off her funds. Almost all the jewelry she owned was fake. Columbo casually mentions she had a lot of boyfriends.
Well, Mrs. Caldwell was beautiful and charming. For a woman of 36.
For a woman of 36. For a woman of 36.
36? What did the age of 36 mean in the 70s? 36 is still young, isn't it? Isn't it? Old Shallow Wexler is played by Eric Christmas, born March 19th, 1916, in London, England. He was in the Andromeda Strain, Johnny Got His Gun, Harold and Maude, and Mouse Hunt, and at least one appearance on all the TV shows between 1989 and 1997. Well, I'm done talking to this Wexler fella and all his opinions. Let's move on to a car lot. This is a Cadillac dealership located on Ventura Boulevard in Los Angeles. It's still here today. The building seems to be larger now, but there is still a sheltered drive-through entrance. Look at Columbo's poor windshield wiper. That's the one he was supposed to get fixed and candidate for crime.
Lieutenant, would you kindly turn on your windshield wipers?
They were working perfect yesterday. I must have lost one in a car wash.
Columbo parks and yanks the parking brake like he does.
Yes, indeed. It's a real honey. We don't get to see many of these around anymore, especially in this condition.
Oh, salesman.
I'm looking for a Mr. Shoup.
Charlie Shoup.
My name is Columbo.
He continues to try and butter up Columbo by complimenting his car.
How many miles you got on it, Mr. Columbo? 20,000? 30,000 tops.
Well, I got over 100,000 miles on this car.
Pretty hard to believe. Well, look, I don't care what the speedometer says. I'm going to make you an offer on a trade-in that you just won't be able to turn down.
I wonder if he used that same pickup line for old ancient Janice.
Well, look, I don't care what the speedometer says.
Also, he says speedometer when he surely meant odometer. The same mistake happens in Etude in Black.
And I looked at your car the morning after the crime, and the speedometer showed 9 miles more than when you brought it in.
Columbo goes ahead and reveals he's with the police and is here to talk about Janice Caldwell.
Where were you Tuesday evening, Mr. Shoup, between 9 and midnight?
I was right here until 9:30. That's when we close up. Janice was supposed to pick me up.
He says he called her house when she didn't show, but nobody answered, so he figured she must have stood him up.
So I went out with a little bookkeeper we got here. Had a couple drinks across the street, went back to my place.
You can substantiate that?
Well, she's right inside, Lieutenant.
Charlie Shoup, car salesman, is played by John Calvin, born November 29th, 1947, in Staten Island, New York. He was in every episode of The Paul Lynde Show and Tales of the Gold Monkey, and shows up in The Cheap Detective and Norma Ray. Shoop reveals the offer he can't refuse.
Lieutenant, I'll give you $80 for it in a trade.
Next, we're at the Halpern House. Columbo is here to explain why he cannot start the report.
Janice Caldwell died between 10:30 and 11. Janice Caldwell had a boyfriend. She was supposed to meet him at 9:30. That's an hour before she was supposed to have died. She never showed up.
Columbo says the boyfriend tried to call and nobody answered, so why couldn't she answer the phone? He shares with Halperin what he wrote down.
Maybe she was dead already.
Or maybe she just didn't want to talk to the man.
But she answered the phone later when her husband called. But did she pick up the phone at 10:30? Because her fingerprints were not on the telephone.
Columbo is now figuring Mr. Caldwell had an accomplice.
The next thing, I suppose, that you're going to ask me to believe is this phantom accomplice comes back the next night to kill my wife. Is that right? This theory is a crock.
You think so, sir?
Halperin re-emphasizes that they are looking for a burglar who panicked and killed 2 women.
Now, that's the theory we're going to go on. Is that clear? That's an order.
Yes, sir.
All right. Little legwork, and we'll have this man in a week. I promise you.
As Columbo leaves the house troubled, we hear him being paged over the police radio in the car. He's borrowing this car, by the way, because his car is still acting up.
This is 194.
The call is from the medical examiner's office. He says there were no traces of chlorine in her lungs, but he did find something that might interest Columbo.
Trihydric alcohol glycerol and palmitic acid.
Say that again, Doc.
Soap, Lieutenant. Soap.
So, glycerol is a trihydric alcohol. And glycerol, or glycerin, is a liquid found mainly in coconut and olive oil, but is also in other fats and oils. And palmitic acid comes from many fats and oils, but most notable is palm oil. These things alone are obviously not soap, but they are absolutely necessary components of soap. Soap, after all, is made of a combination of fats and oils, water and lye. Next, Columbo is at the police station to have a talk with Lieutenant Duffy. And now the episode itself confirms his name is Paul Duffy. And all the credits guy knew was that it started with a D, so he made up a name. Columbo wanted to know who he had as the most likely suspect based on the robberies alone and forgetting about the murders.
Artie Jessup. Artie's always my first choice when he's out on the streets. We already talked to him. Artie has an alibi for both nights.
Well, Columbo figures Artie might have something valuable to share with Columbo, so he goes out to find him. And he's hanging out at his favorite bar, sitting alone, thinking and drinking.
Mr. Jessup?
I know you.
You got scotch?
Yes, sir.
You like scotch? Give me some scotch.
Columbo asks if he could help him, and then takes out Janice's ring. Artie takes out a jeweler's eye loupe to take a closer look.
Where'd you find a box of Cracker Jacks?
Come on, pal, what is this, some kind of hustle?
Columbo shows him his badge.
I'm from homicide. I'm investigating the killing of those 2 women in Bel Air.
You're not going to hang that one on me. No way!
Columbo tries to calm him by saying he knows he had nothing to do with it. And Artie's like, well, what are you here for then?
Sit down.
I don't want to sit down.
May I sit down?
Go ahead.
Columbo says the robbery department can't identify the burglar that committed those 2 murders and wants to know if Artie has heard anything.
I can't help you. Oh, look, Lieutenant, that guy who killed those women, he scares me. He gives guys like me a bad name. If I knew who that guy was, you think I wouldn't have called you guys a long time ago? Right.
Columbo says he has a problem and Artie can help him. He says he thinks he knows who killed those 2 women, but he can't prove it.
You know who killed those women?
Next, Halperin and Hugh have a troubled discussion.
Who wants money?
The man, the burglar. The one who's been robbing all the houses around here. Marky's dead serious now. He says he's ready to go to the police if I don't pay him.
But how does he know you killed Janice?
I don't know.
Halperin asks how much he wants, and Hugh says he doesn't know. He'll find out later when he meets him at 4:30 at the bar on 5th and Wall. Halperin says, all right, well, you meet him, and I will be waiting nearby. Find out what he wants, and we'll decide how to deal with him.
All right. No violence.
Why, Hugh, I'm no more violent than you are.
All right, back at the bar, and in comes Hugh, blending in seamlessly with his surroundings. This fella here at the bar is played by Max Wagner, born November 28, 1901, in Torreon, Coahuila, Mexico. Now here's a man that literally was in everything without exaggeration, starting his acting career in the 1920s and keeping steady background character work up through the 70s. He was in so many productions it's hard to pick one, so I'll just mention his biggest, which is appearing in over 100 episodes of Gunsmoke. Smooth Hugh strolls past another man looking down on his luck. This is Martin Strader, born September 2nd, 1909 in Los Angeles, California. Uncredited for all 77 productions he has been in, many of his roles when he was younger were townsman and villager or pedestrian, but it seems when he got older, he kept getting the roles of barfly and derelict. Poor fella. Anyway, let's continue to admire Hugh's choice and appearance. Another rough-looking man here is George Hickman, born October 16th, 1906 in Manhattan, New York. His career looks very similar to Martin Strader's in that his younger background acting roles were things like elevator operator or passenger, but as time passed he kept ending up with barfly, bartender, and derelict. Hugh walks behind Artie and then turns around to sit at a booth. Artie gets up to have a discussion, getting right down to business.
I figure you killed your old lady and tried to pin it on me. Well, I got news for you, pal. Nobody makes Artie Jessup a patsy. You got it? It's gonna cost you.
A patsy is someone who is easy to manipulate and blame or victimize for something they didn't do. And Artie ain't no patsy. He says all he has to do is confess to the first 3 robberies and he goes back to the clink on a burglary rap, which he wouldn't mind in the least. All his friends are in there. And if he confesses to those, suddenly the cops are now taking an even closer look at the 2 burglaries where the 2 women were killed.
And what do you think? I think they got you. Oh, come on. What's it gonna be, pal? Do I go to the cops or we work something out?
All right. How much?
Good.
Michael McGuire, the actor for Hugh, does quite a good job trying not to look terrified while looking completely terrified. The scene switches to Hugh stepping out of the bar. And that is an interesting technique for carrying a box full of stuff. I really can't figure out the advantage though. Would he have to sit in order to set it down? Here is this location today, located on East 5th Street. And Wall is just a little bit down the street. But Hugh gave us this location and it was correct, which is nice. When Hugh walks down the sidewalk and around the corner, he is turning here. These cheaper buildings didn't exist yet. And we can even line up that skyline, but we have to look past some buildings. This neighborhood in downtown Los Angeles is known as Skid Row, and unfortunately has one of the largest populations of homeless people in the entire United States. And if you do some research on the history of this neighborhood, it has kinda always been this way. There have been efforts to clean it up and help the people, but it has maintained its rough appearance and large homeless population. Well, Halperin was waiting around that corner in his Cadillac. Hugh gets in and shares what Artie wants.
It's $5,000 in small bills. Old money.
5,000, is that all? Man has no imagination. When do you meet him?
Tomorrow afternoon here.
Hugh again says the man is dead serious.
Marky's dead serious.
Marky's dead serious.
And says he knows there's no proof to charge him for the 2 murders.
He's not a stupid man.
All right, now I want you to get the money from the bank.
Mark, we can't start paying him. He's just gonna want more.
Just leave him to me. You keep your mouth shut and don't admit to anything. We're gonna be just fine.
Back at the police headquarters, Halperin walks into an office and seems surprised to see Columbo.
What are you doing here?
Lieutenant Duffy, he's out on call. I'm using his office.
Yes, this is Lieutenant Duffy's office, not Columbo's. The only time we'll ever see Columbo's office was during any old port in a storm, right?
What's the matter with your office?
These are the prime suspects in the robberies, and Duffy didn't want to let the folders out of his office.
Then Columbo begins to encourage Halperin, telling him he was right all along about this robbery aspect of the crime, and that he is searching through these files because he thinks the answer is definitely in there somewhere.
Good. I'll glance at these myself again. You get a very good look at that man the night he ran from the Caldwell house. Still, you never know, do you?
Then Halperin comes across Artie Jessup's file. We get to see his current address, his birthplace of New York, his social security number, and that he has a receding hairline with a blue jacket and black socks. Duffy has been doing a wonderful job with his report. But Halperin is particularly interested in the address. And that address, in real life, doesn't lead us anywhere significant to the episode, I checked.
Well, on the other hand, I've been through these a dozen times. I don't think they can help me any.
That's a good thought, too, sir. No sense wasting your time on a dead end.
Columbo is really putting Halperin at ease, making sure he doesn't see him as a threat any longer.
If you come up with anything, let me know.
Halperin goes to his house. All his garage doors are open for some reason, but he's here to get the oh-so-expensive glass jewelry that he stole the night of the Caldwell murder. Then he heads to the address he found in Artie's file. Walking up every other stair because he's in a hurry and wants to get off Skid Row but also doesn't want to look like he's in a hurry, he stops at apartment 13. But I don't know how he knew it was apartment 13. We weren't shown that information in the address line, but he knew. Halpern takes out a card to open the deadbolt. Just so you know, you can't use a credit card or similar plastic card to unlock a deadbolt nowadays. You're going to have to get out your Mr. Brimmer lockpick set for that. But some older deadbolt locks, particularly in apartments, had the slanted deadbolt, like doorknobs do. Credit cards work for those and doorknob locks, as long as you're on the correct side. And just look at this old apartment. I don't know, a little paint, a few flowers, a couple of throw pillows. It could be very nice. Halpern decides to stash the jewelry under the mattress and heads out. Next scene, here comes cool, slick Hugh returning to the bar. He finds Artie playing pool, so he gets himself a pool cue from the rack. He pretends to join Artie so he can casually hand him the money in an envelope.
Easy, under the table.
This man saw the whole thing since Hugh so obviously doesn't belong here, and he's something to look at.
Gonna count it?
I trust you. If it's short, you can always make it up in the next payment.
The next payment? You said that...
I said a lot of things, Mr. Caldwell. One thing I forgot to tell you was that I'm a chronic liar.
Now the scene changes to a cop car pulling up to the Lariat, which is our bar location on East 5th Street. Here we are again today. It's really difficult to tell that this is the same view. Not only are we now looking at a 3-story building where the club was, but that tall building in the background doesn't look anything like the one from the episode anymore. One thing does look the same though, and that's this building. Even though they felt the need to paint the brick baby blue, it's the same building. Now you can do your one-stop shopping for hookahs, tobacco, snacks, and kids' toys. And then you can step right outside and try out your purchase.
Sure they're in here, sir? Positive. Caldwell's meeting him on my instruction.
Behind them is the Hard Rock Cafe, which is just down the street from the bar and kitty corner to the Blue Kids Toys and Hookah Shop. It's not the Hard Rock Cafe anymore, and it looks terribly different, in a terrible sort of way. This corner Hard Rock Cafe was featured on the back cover of the 1970s The Doors album called Morrison Hotel. The address is 300 East 5th Street in LA. Now you're wondering, wait a minute. The Hard Rock Cafe's first store didn't open until 1971, and that was in London, England. So how can it be that the Doors' 1970 album has the Hard Rock Cafe on the back of it? Well, you would be right about that. This Hard Rock Cafe was just simply named that, and the Doors band got thirsty and paid a little visit. It was just a bar. Their photographer took a few pictures while they were there, and when the album Morrison Hotel released in 1970, Side 1 was called Hard Rock Cafe, because they liked the place. So, I guess the Hard Rock Cafe people named their restaurant Hard Rock Cafe after this album, which was named after this bar that has a cameo in this episode. Pretty cool. One more little piece of history attached to this once Hard Rock Cafe is there is a scene from the beginning of Michael Jackson's 1983 Beat It music video where some of the gang members leave this very bar. In fact, almost the entire music video is filmed right here on Skid Row. Well, Halperin and some other cops enter the bar, which triggers this undercover cop man to hop into action. Columbo is lagging behind, thinking about the fact that he's got to somehow arrest his boss today. The little undercop fella is played by Duke Fishman, born July 15, 1906, in Manila, Philippines. He was in quite a few movies, but always blended into the backgrounds. On television, he can mostly be found in Gunsmoke, wandering around as a townsman or hanging out in the bar for 71 episodes. Halperin delivers his verdict on Artie.
It's called blackmail, Jessup. First you rob this man's house, you kill 2 women, then you've got the gall to try blackmail.
Get out of here. You don't have any proof.
We'll have it as soon as we search your apartment, which we're going to do right now.
Halperin is just so smart and tough. He orders Columbo and Duffy to ride with him, along with one other squad car.
Commissioner, I believe we're going to need a warrant before we can search that apartment.
We've already got one. You want to check it?
Yes, sir, that's fine. I think you're making a mistake.
Halperin smugly says, "I'll prove to you I'm not making a mistake." Everyone files out of the bar, and the scene changes to them pulling up in a 1974 Chevrolet Bel Air police cruiser to the apartment located on Vine Street in real life. I found this location based on the Belden Hotel in the background. That hotel was once a popular spot for film stars from the silent era to stay during the 1920s. The two big names I keep reading are Buster Keaton and Mae Murray stayed there. In the 80s, it was converted into a homeless shelter, and I believe that is still what it is today. And you want to know something else? Remember when Halperin originally showed up here, there was a sign on the brick wall reading California War Surplus Mart. Interestingly, that is still exactly what it is today. These double doors is where the entrance to the apartment is for the episode. Columbo tries to give Halperin a chance to be truthful.
I don't believe Jessup could have killed either of these women, particularly your wife.
Don't be ridiculous. I saw it, I tell you. He threw her in the pool.
Sir, I realize that your wife appeared to die in the pool. Actually, she died in the bathtub.
What are you talking about?
Then the landlord, I suppose he is, brings the master key to unlock the door. I wish I could identify the man. Maybe you can help me with him, too. They enter the apartment and Columbo explains the water in his wife's lungs.
The water in her lungs, there were traces of soap.
At this point, Halperin needs to get one of those guys to hurry up and find that jewelry he hid.
Duffy, check that bathroom. You get the kitchen.
Columbo says he knew something was wrong as soon as he saw what Mrs. Halperin was wearing when she was thrown in the pool. She still had on the outfit with the torn sleeve from the cactus plant.
Why does a woman go to an important testimonial dinner knowing that a sleeve is torn? Got a whole closet full of nice clothes. She must have been drowned earlier. Now I find out about the soap. That places it in the bathtub.
Halperin was like, well, so what if she was drowned in the bathtub?
So Jessup surprised her and killed her. He dressed the body and threw it in the pool to make it look accidental.
Now, if you think about it for only a few seconds, you'll realize that makes absolutely 100% no sense at all for him to suggest the burglar took all the time to dress her and throw her in the pool. Columbo says that's not possible for it to happen that way.
You know why? You see, the bathroom, the bathtub, the faucet itself, everything was bone dry, including the towels.
He says she had to have drowned before 5 or 6 o'clock, otherwise it wouldn't have been that dry. Long before Jessup would have gotten there.
As a matter of fact, just about the time that you came home for supper.
Halperin gets upset and walks away from Columbo to stare at the gray walls of the apartment as Columbo approaches him from behind.
I believe you killed your wife, and I believe you either killed Janice Caldwell or you're covering up for it.
You just lost your badge, my friend.
Columbo has no reaction to him saying that. In fact, he continues sharing evidence that points to Halperin.
At first I thought Mr. Caldwell was responsible, but that didn't work out because of the nightgown business. When your wife was killed and you had that terrific alibi, then it suddenly hit me. You were in it together and you're trying to blame Artie Jessup.
Columbo says Artie Jessup was nowhere near either house those 2 nights. Then Duffy finally lifts the mattress for Halperin to find the bundle of jewelry. Halperin takes the jewelry and asks, well, how do you explain this?
Janice Caldwell's jewels.
It seems like quite an assumption to so quickly say those are Janice's. How did he know that?
I can explain it. You took him from the Caldwell house, you hid him, and today you planted him here to incriminate Mr. Jessup.
Columbo doesn't show an ounce of hesitation or fear and remains very calm during this whole scene, and Halperin cannot understand his confidence.
You're crazy. You can't prove anything like that.
Columbo calls for Artie to be brought into the apartment.
Commissioner Halpern says he found those jewels under your mattress.
That's crazy.
You're a liar.
Hey, I don't even live here.
What?
He doesn't live here. I live here. These are my shirts. That's my underwear. My brother-in-law. It's my nephew. My niece.
I like that the brother-in-law picture is really just a picture of the dog because you can't even see the man's face. And the niece and nephew seem like some happy children. Or they had a really funny photographer to get them to smile. Do you remember having to get your picture taken as a little kid? I was happy enough in most of them, but one year I was just not having it. Thanks, Mom, for putting up with my stubbornness all those years. Columbo says this apartment was vacant for 3 weeks and he just signed the lease.
You looked in the closet. Those were my pajamas and my bathrobe.
The file folder, the report on the desk.
Columbo says yes, he takes responsibility for that. He admits he is the one who persuaded Artie Jessup to contact Hugh Caldwell because he knew Caldwell was going to contact Halperin.
I was sure that once you knew the true identity of the burglar, you'd try and incriminate him. So this morning, just after I signed the lease, I made up a new file folder on Mr. Jessup. Everything was the same, except this address.
Hopefully you were listening there, those of you who are positive Mrs. Columbo doesn't exist and that Columbo is a bachelor, and you like to say, well, we see where he lives in A Friend Indeed, alone in a grungy apartment. Columbo had to take some extreme measures to trap his boss in this episode. Extreme enough to sign a lease for an apartment long enough to sprinkle in some of his belongings and then police witnesses to observe what is happening. And he only signed the lease this morning.
Only one person beside myself knew this address. That was you, sir. I think once your friend Mr. Caldwell understands the situation, he'll fill in some missing pieces.
Wow, what an ending. This gotcha is one of the best entrapments of a murderer in the series. It's in the same realm as Suitable for Framing and Candidate for Crime.
This is entrapment.
No bullet in the wall. Bullet's right here. It's in my handkerchief.
But most fans say this is their favorite one. The fact of it being Columbo's boss really shakes things up and brings extra satisfaction to the arrest, especially for how smug he is throughout the episode. Can you imagine being in Artie Jessup's shoes and getting to play a vital role in the arrest of the police commissioner? He's going to talk about this for the rest of his life. This is a pretty original episode with really nice storytelling and plenty of little twists. The characters themselves are well drawn, giving us a good enough idea of their personalities. Every single actor did an exceptional job. There were no Mickey Spillanes in this episode. There was some really impressive stunt work. The jumping from the helicopter, the underwater camera footage, and what a variety of locations. We were going on field trips for days. Actually, I think it's just a couple days, isn't it? One of my favorite little twists is the lack of fingerprints being the clue rather than fingerprints being a clue. The musical score was a combination of recycled music from Publisher Parish and Candidate for Crime, as well as some original pieces were written for the episode. And that is why there are 2 credits for the music score, Billy Goldenberg and Dick de Benedictis. Mark Halperin is quite a frightening villain with his indifferentness about covering up the first murder and his readiness to drown his wife less than 24 hours later. He really believed he was in complete control, knowing his authority and status will protect him from even being questioned. Here is another quote from Richard Kiley. "I loved the show, so I was quite pleased to appear on it. It was a wonderful experience. It was doubly enjoyable because Ben Gazzarra directed the episode. He was an old friend of Peter's, so it was an enormously enjoyable and easygoing set. Peter really set the tone of quality. Speaking of Ben Gazzarra being an old friend of Peter's, he was also very familiar with Peter Falk's reputation for multiple takes, which always led to slower production and upsetting big-budget britches Universal in the process. But Ben had fun with it. He says, Peter can exhaust you. He can go on forever. He's warming up on take 70. I enjoyed it. I'd beat him to it. I'd say, let's do it again. He'd say, yeah. And in the presence of onlooking Universal executives on set, deadpan Gazzarra would announce to the cast and crew, we're gonna do it until we get it right. And Peter responds, yeah, that's right. We're gonna do it until we get it right. Gazzarra found this hilarious with the studio guys having an aneurysm on take 50, as Peter says, I'm just warming up, Ben, I'm just warming up. And we are now over halfway done with reviewing the original 70s run of Columbo. From now on, the seasons will get shorter because Peter Falk continues to try and pursue his Hollywood movie acting career. Continuing our record keeping of murderers' heights, Richard Kiley was 5 foot 11 inches. Oh, I suppose you'd like to know my rating of this episode. Well, I give it a strong 5 Columbo cigars out of 5. And this is another episode where Columbo never lights his cigar. It's always already lit. There's a few alternate titles to share from other countries. Finland was short on creativity and called it A Friend in Need. France called it In All Friendship. Italy called it A Friend to Save. West Germany called it My Dead, You're Dead. There we go, that's a good one. And Japan called it The Grave of Power. I like that one a lot. And this is the end of Season 3. We did it. Coming up next to kick off Season 4 is An Exercise in Fatality.